Hi, everyone. Nathaniel here, Missing Middle Realtor. I'm joining Matt today here at his office, Foremost Financial. Um, Foremost Financial is a lender that's actually focused on helping middle housing builders and developers, I would say, realize their projects. Yeah.
That's correct. So the company was founded in 1987. We've been financing infill construction ever since. Maybe 10, 15 years ago, the focus was on custom homes. And then maybe the last 3 or 4 years, it's kind of shifted from financing custom homes on spec to missing middle housing. Probably for the past 10 years, we've been financing more duplexes, triplexes, but every single year we finance more and more of them. And the environment has gotten much better with the City of Toronto zoning changes and also the province of Ontario, the More Homes Built Faster Act. So the environment is shifting for middle housing. We're going to see a lot more of it, and we've been financing a lot of it and hope to finance even more in the future.
Awesome. Um, so, in your perspective, how would you describe this change for Toronto for middle housing?
I think it's really a sea change. I think primarily for the last 50 years in Toronto, the thought has been a family lives in a single family home, and that was the preferred method of housing. Now that's too expensive. So um, there's been some innovation in the architecture of it, and a lot of this middle housing is not like a duplex, triplex of the past, where it's a basement unit, main floor, second floor. There are really a lot more design changes where it may be a duplex, triplex, fourplex, multiplex, but you also have multiple levels. So it's kind of more resembles a townhouse than a multiplex. So you have a basement, main floor, second floor, and in some cases third floor. So it's become quite an attractive option for housing.
Um, that's wonderful. I have a similar thoughts as well too. I feel that many Canadians are in a sense overhoused, and then there's so many more Canadians that are underhoused as well too. It's leaving people without many options. So, hopefully these changes are going to start to change the face of housing in Toronto as well too.
Absolutely.
Can you tell us a little bit more about Foremost Financial and how you guys want to help bring more missing middle housing online?
Sure. So I think any builder developer would tell you banks in Canada are very conservative organizations, and at low levels, probably 10 million and below, they do not finance construction. So typically, your options for financing construction would be 100% equity, or you'd have to go to a non-bank lender. So Foremost is not a bank. We source our funds from investors. That way, because banks have to satisfy their regulators who have a lot of boxes to check, and they're not interested in financing small projects. It's not worth their while. So Foremost and organizations like us, we're called non-bank lenders. So we take funds from investors and then we lend them out to entrepreneurs looking to create value using real estate. So that's why we're able to do it faster, easier, less hoops to jump through very effectively. So we give the capital to somebody looking to build a middle housing. They build it and they're able to refinance with an institution, either a bank or a lender insured by CMHC. So it's really just bridge financing to give you the capital you need to kind of make money with real estate going forward and kind of move on to the next. So it is a little more expensive than typical bank financing. Many lines of credit are priced off of prime, maybe prime. We're priced off of prime plus 4% in this environment for a first mortgage. So you pay a small premium, but the benefits are speed and flexibility.
Wonderful. Yeah. So there's always a trade-off for things like this. I mean, ultimately, I would say that you aim to deliver that people get what they pay for. Should they go this route of financing?
For sure.
So would the lending process for the average person or a new build, or a new middle housing developer, or maybe a large family that wants to take something like this on, is the process any different, or is there any kind of special considerations that may be made or asked of them?
So The process is not really much different from a custom home. So the most important part, if you're considering financing for a middle home, um, it's to look at the end value. So if you're going to do a multiplex, you'd look at the value of the property once complete. So there's two ways to do it. One, an income approach, where they would look at the income of the property less the expenses, and that would get what's called the net operating income. And then that's the income the property generates after all the expenses. And then you divide that by the cap rate. So that's what an investor, if they're purchasing it, what the return an investor would expect on it. So if it's $100,000 net operating income, divide that, let's say 5% is the going rate for something like that. Then you come to a value of the property through the income approach. And then there's a direct comparison approach where an appraiser would look at similar multiplexes in the area, and they would look at, okay, if it's, the multiplexes are selling for $800 a square foot or $900 a square foot, they would make adjustments from the comparable properties to your property to come to a value and say, okay, let's say your multiplex will be a little bit nicer. It'll go for $900 per square foot. So they would take the income approach, they would take the direct comparison approach, and they would kind of come to a value based on who they think they would, who a purchaser, what a purchaser would pay for it, and that'd be in that moment. So if the multiplex was complete today, what a knowledgeable purchaser would pay for it today.
Wonderful. Yeah, so it sounds like it's not that much different from like a big custom build in general.
Yes.
And then we're using some fundamental principles of, you could say, real estate investing in general as well to come to these conclusions. Should, just a regular person want to take a project like this on?
Absolutely.
So I guess moving forward with these rule changes, zoning changes in the city of Toronto, and probably eventually the rest of the province and hopefully the country as well too. Who are you hoping to attract and work with? You want to stay small and medium, or do you have some goals to grow or serve a certain segment of the market as well?
So we like to stay in the Greater Toronto area. The closer to Toronto, the more stable the markets are. Some other markets in the province are more boom and bust. We find Niagara Falls, for example, when the market's going well, Niagara Falls kind of, the values appreciate quite a bit. When things are soft, they fall much quicker. In Toronto, it's a lot more stable than some of the outlying markets. So we like the Greater Toronto area. Hamilton is the market's greatly improving. We like Hamilton. Kitchener, Waterloo, Cambridge, with the universities and the tech sector out there are doing quite well. Barrie, pretty close to Toronto, still a very nice area to live. Collingwood, four season amenities, we like Collingwood. And in the Greater Toronto area, we'll go as far east as Bowmanville. Bowmanville's booming, but beyond that, it's a bit too far, and so it's less stable and it's harder to monitor if you're coming by. But we're looking to go elsewhere, like Ottawa eventually, and maybe some other provinces, but those are kind of down the line, but we like to stay where we know and we're comfortable.
Okay, that's perfectly reasonable. I mean, when we work in Toronto, and yeah, I'm in Toronto. I'll see you soon in an hour.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, it could, if we, branch out too far, probably our level of service may drop off, or something may get lost along the way.
Absolutely. You want to be able to drive by your site and meet your client eyeball to eyeball and look at it rather than hiring a very expensive third party.
Right. So it sounds like you guys have a lot of different roles actually in-house as far as finance, not just financing is concerned, but also the monitoring and consultation and things like that. Like, there's always questions that come up during projects like this, and I would say it's probably an advantage for you guys to have someone nearby that you can call on, or that you can that someone can bounce questions off of, or get feedback, right?
Absolutely. So some other lenders, they would hire an appraiser to monitor construction, or they would hire a third-party cost consultant, which is quite expensive. But we do that for more complicated projects. But for wood frame construction, generally we're able to, we have one inspector that does all of our projects, and it's quite simple construction, so we no need to overcomplicate it. And we kind of specialize in construction, so that's why we're able to monitor it in house versus relying on third parties most of the time.
Okay, that's an advantage for you guys for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any current or old projects that stand out in your mind for you right now?
So we had one kind of pioneer in the city of Toronto, probably 10 years ago, maybe more than 10 years. They were buying row houses kind of close to Trinity Bellwoods, kind of Palmerston, Bellwoods Avenue, Lippincott. They would buy these row houses or these kind of end semi-detached homes, and it'd be a single-family home, and they would convert it into a duplex, triplex, fourplex, maybe a few laneways, and so that he was kind of the pioneer with that, and we've been happy to support him over the years. And a lot of the comparables that appraisers are using now to value properties were his projects. So I just think these 2, 3, 4 unit condos in Trinity Bellwoods, we finance a ton of those. If you walk around, you can see them quite a bit. That was kind of the paved the way, and slowly kind of moved out. So we did one, maybe not so recently, maybe three years ago, on the Danforth. This individual bought this detached home in 2017. I think it took about 2 years to maybe a year to get the approval, a year and a half to build. He built it was a condo, but 1 unit faced the backyard, 1 unit faced the front yard, and it was stunning on the inside. Two people both got single family homes. They were it was a detached. He was able to get around it by condominiumizing it, and they both sold for well above the pro forma, and nice families were able to live in some nice accommodations. And we did one in Etobicoke recently at Islington in the 401, where it was a triplex. It resembled almost like a condo building where there's 2 bedroom apartments, one in the basement, one on the main floor, one on the second floor. And that was rented out to 3 separate tenants. And then the building was sold, and they did quite well. So it's kind of, originally it started 10 years ago close to Trinity Bellwoods because the real estate's so expensive down there and the values are quite high. But now it's kind of slowly moving out bit by bit into the outer core. And maybe in the suburbs, we could start doing more of these. Outside of the core city of Toronto, we maybe see more of these projects as it becomes more acceptable in the market.
Right. Yeah. The fact that the yellow belt has opened up across Toronto, the potential I think is incredible for the future. But we already live in the future now, and there have been pioneers that you've been working with already. There are people around that have been through this process, and now this process has actually gotten, I think, just a little bit easier, just a little bit less bureaucratic, I guess you could say.
Right. I think we're still in the early stages, though. Like, I feel like the market doesn't accept it as much or has the knowledge. Mm-hmm. People understand living in condos, but the more people buy in these types of housing or rent, the more they understand it, the more of a premium they will take. Right now, there's a bit of a discount between this missing middle housing and condos, but slowly as people understand it, I feel like there'll be a premium to live in a kind of a duplex, triplex over a condo. Just the market needs to accept it. So the people taking on this project now, they'll have a big advantage in 2, 3, 4, 5 years because they'll have experience, they'll have a system down. So I think even it's still early, so anyone getting into it will have a big learning curve, but it'll benefit them in the long run.
Yes, I can see it already. I think that each build is, it's going to be a puzzle to solve. I mean, it's opportunity, but it's going to be a puzzle solving exercise. As even in each neighborhood of Toronto, it can vary quite a bit of what is possible, or in the land composition and things like that as well too. It's going to be very interesting to see. I'm very excited for the future. Are there any kind of one or two major lessons that can be passed on to anyone who's even thinking about taking something like this on?
So number one, I would understand the HST component. Because it's very difficult. Like, you have to pay your HST, so understand the cost of it. And if it's a minor renovation, so I would just align your tax implications accordingly. So we've had individuals have minor renovations as defined by the CRA, and they haven't had to pay HST on it. So it's really all, I've talked to your tax professional, make sure it's um, all acceptable in case you get audited. But that's one important part. Um, Number two is just to kind of arrange things to make it move as fast as possible. So when you purchase a property, you should hopefully have a shovel in the ground as soon as possible. So I would do your due diligence and try to move quickly. Because the faster you're able to get and complete these projects, the less interest carrying costs there are, and the higher your return on equity would be.
Right. So I guess you would say that we could say that with these recent changes that the speed at which a project moves forward now it has been reduced greatly. I mean, at this point, have you seen projects move much faster recently than they have in the past?
Absolutely. I think the turnaround time has probably been cut down by a year, I'd imagine. A lot of before people would have issues at the Committee of Adjustments, and even so, when they go for a zoning variance, a lot of the neighbors would band together, come to the meeting. There'd be a lot of political pressure for the Committee of Adjustments, so they would turn down perfectly good applications, or they would approve the applications, and then the neighbors would appeal it to a higher planning body like the LPAT, and that would delay the individual by over 6 months or a year. So now, because the multiplexes are done as of right based on the existing zoning, there's less of a potential for individuals to get to have their minor variances rejected, or two, have it approved and then have it appealed to a higher body.
Right. So for everyone listening, in general, that just means there used to be a lot of roadblocks that were kind of in place, or just avenues for others in the neighborhood or others in the community to, you could say, object to, or just challenge a project that someone wanted to bring online. And I don't know, I feel like at this point with Canadian housing and Toronto housing, we're past that point where we can have these kind of objections and challenges. I think that we really need to be on the side of letting those who would take the risk to put these projects on, to enable them, to help them in some way. Yeah,
for sure. I guess it's economics 101. There's the supply and there's the demand. If you increase the supply at all levels, make everything easier and faster, cheaper to do, there'll be more supply taken on board, and then naturally the equilibrium prices will fall because the supply would better match demand, or the prices won't increase as much because the supply would increase enough to satisfy the demand, and we wouldn't have the runaway price increases for resale and rents that we have seen in the past. So hopefully it would help solve the housing crisis.
Mm-hmm. While we're on this economics, can we speak a little bit to the economics of building as well too? Would you say that, and I don't mean to put words in your mouth, but would you say that building 4 units in a custom size home, which typically in Toronto has been 3,000 square feet plus, would you say that building 4 units in that kind of similar kind of footprint reduces some building costs, or your cost per square foot may go down a little bit versus building just a single family home? Or do they kind of just stay the same, so that if you're building at $400 or $500 a square foot, instead of 1 living unit, you're now getting 4 out of it, which is actually quite a bit more?
I would say the cost per square foot is the same, if not slightly higher. Because number one, kitchens and bathrooms are quite expensive. So the more kitchens and bathrooms there are per square foot, the higher the rate is. There's also some fireproofing needs between the units. So it has to be fire rated drywall, also soundproofing and kind of safe and sound further soundproofing insulation can get quite expensive. And there's separate meters for electricity, water, and natural gas often. Um, so that adds to the cost. So I think the cost per square foot is slightly higher, but you do get a premium from either being able to rent all 4 units or sell 4 units as a condo. So it's a lot more affordable. So certain areas of Toronto, people are so wealthy that they're willing to pay a premium for a single family home. So it doesn't work in certain areas. Like I can't imagine on the Bridle Path it would work as well as probably on Bellwoods, probably Trinity Bellwoods, east of Toronto, west end of Toronto, more urban or even suburban areas of Toronto and the outlying areas where it's not mega rich, but there's so wealthy individuals want to buy or want to live in um, things that resemble townhomes within one home. That could still be quite advantageous to do.
Right. So I would say, I guess you could say that, you know, even though costs aren't reduced, we're able to do things like improve quality of life for tenants or individuals and, you know, individual families that may find that this is an option for them for their housing needs.
Right. But it's actually, I was more speaking to the hard cost component
Okay.
because the cost to build is the same, if not more, than a custom home.
Right.
But then you have 4 homes sharing the parcel of land a custom home would take on. So the land is the expensive part. The hard costs are cheap. It's not that $300 a square foot, $400 a square foot. That's not the main contributing factor to why housing is so expensive. It's the land. So if you have 4 units sharing one lot, the land value is about a quarter of what it would be if you had one custom home on a single family lot. So your savings isn't in the hard cost; it's in the land, and the land's the most expensive part of it.
That's well, that the land is actually the first step, I guess, for any project like this, whether it's middle housing or not.
Absolutely.
So everyone's starting from the same, you could say, the same playing field. You know, thanks for sharing all these thoughts with us so far. And you know, now that these rules have changed, you know, ever so slightly, then we probably need more. But you know, what are your thoughts on middle housing in Toronto in the next 6 months to 2 years?
So I don't see a lot happening in the next 6 months. I know I'm aware of some projects currently happening. Some are listed for sale. So there'll be a few more online, hopefully a few more sales. Like even the homes that were built 5 or 6 years ago, they'll be sold in this environment, which would be good for appraisers to understand the value of these. And I think as more sell, as more comparables, the value will just continue to go up. And in 2 years, there should be lots more comparable sales, lots more examples, and then the public will start to understand the benefits of these. And it'll be more socially acceptable to live in this. So I think in 2 years, I think currently there's a bit of they sell at a discount to mid-rise and high-rise condos. So I can see in 2 years, probably the next 6 months, it will continue to be the same discount, but over the next 2 years, the discount will decrease. It will slowly come into a similar value to these mid-rise and high-rise condos.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess as people realize that the value that it can bring to, you know, their lives or their lifestyle, that gap will close. Absolutely. In a way.
Yeah.
I guess one of the last things is, you know, if you could change one or two things in these rules and regulations that are already changing, you know, what would they be?
I would say HST is an absolute killer. So now there's a tax credit to $24,000 per unit, and that was put in place when they went from the GST to PST to HST. They did a $24,000 tax credit to lessen the impact of amalgamating GST and PST into HST. So if they increase the tax credit from 24,000, because when they put that tax credit into place, homes were very reasonably priced. So it compensated for increasing the the general sales tax into it. So, but now I think they should probably index that to home prices. So maybe it shouldn't be a $24,000 tax credit per unit. Maybe it should be 50,000, 60,000, or 80,000, just to kind of not gouge homeowners based on that. So if they took out the HST component or reduced it, it would incentivize, make it a lot cheaper to build homes, increase the supply, and kind of benefiting everybody in Toronto or in the Greater Toronto area.
Yeah, like I'm a really firm believer that people having these kind of options opening up to them is going to help society be more just productive in general.
Absolutely.
And productive people pay more taxes.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's social though. Like people, you need a nice place to live. Like it's unaffordable housing prices contributes to homelessness, crime, and misery. So it's really not just. I think just overall society needs to
Right.
to tackle this problem to kind of benefit everybody, because this is a crisis now, and in 5, 10 years, if we go on the current trajectory, it'll get many times worse, and it's not worth it. So I'm happy that politicians and people in the private sector are working on these initiatives to tackle this problem, or at least address it.
Yeah, I think we could all use some more holistic thinking at all levels, and government and private, and and citizens too, as well too.
Absolutely.
Matt, thank you very much for your time today so far. If someone wants to reach out and contact you, or is that something that they can do? Or
Happy to. I guess I have my phone number and my email address in the notes, and always happy to talk and give some scenarios on financing. Say, okay, here's how much equity you need. Here's how much debt, and then kind of let them know the pricing. Kind of be very transparent and kind of let them know how formulas would help them and their project succeed.
okay, wonderful. Thank you. Thanks, Matt. Appreciate it.
Thanks for coming by.